Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the authority positioning expert, and today we have with us a branding expert, Kyle Duford. Kyle, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
Hey, so love talking branding and marketing, and I'm excited to talk to you. And I think that, when you think about, well, who says you're an expert and, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour aspect. So give us a little bit of your background leading up to starting your agency, and then let's jump right into some of the things that you work on with your clients.
Gosh, well, yeah, I don't know if I would call myself an expert. I think I just have a lot of experience. So I guess, somebody once said, if you're in a room full of 10 people and you know more than all of them about a subject, you're considered an expert. It may have been Gladwell who said that. I'm not sure. So thanks for that. But really, I kind of cut my teeth right out of college in a kind of a bizarre way. I started my own magazine. Just really focused on sports and people's wellness. I sold it to a competitor. I wrote for a number of magazines for a number of years, Outside Magazine, Men's Health, Men's Journal. Jumped onto online content when I saw the writing on the wall for magazines kind of in the recession, kind of pre-recession days, recession days. Jumped into online content for places like Examiner.com, and I wrote some stuff for Google, and really learned what it was like to bring people into the story. So I could tell a great story, I could write a good story, and then I started learning how to bring people into the message, through analytics and digital marketing and so forth, getting people to crawl through a page. And somehow I landed in e-commerce, and that was shortly after that, and really just kind of added to the trifecta of sales, storytelling, and driving traffic. And once I learned that, I was able to start working with a lot of brands from then on, Spec Products, Now, Alaska, Keen Footwear, Chrome Industries, Dr. Martens is where I kind of ended up. And I did a lot of consulting in the middle, but really just working with those kind of brand manufacturers. They created their own product and helping them formulate not only their story, but how to position themselves. And it made sense then to leave that world and just for a lot of reasons, work-life balance and so forth, kind of being an agency. So I joined Jeff here at the Brand Leader almost 2.5 years ago. He had been here founded this 22 years ago. And so kind of came over here and started crafting some great stories for brands and helping brands position and rebrand and so forth. So I guess if that makes an expert, then I'll take the moniker.
I took a course online, and I think I can give the old college try. So, you've got a nice pedigree there. That's for sure, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks. It's been fun. It's been interesting to see, $600 million brands like Dr. Martens and $100,000 startups, and anyone in the middle. They go through the same growing pains. They go through the same problems. They go through the same understandings. When you're trying to name a brand, you're still doing the same thing. Whether you're trying to name the new future king of England, or you're naming your own child in the middle of Greenville, South Carolina, it's really the same process you go for. And so that's kind of what I've learned, is that it doesn't matter how big or small or positioned or startup they might be. The process of naming, branding, the one we go through, this kind of tried and true ROI driven process, has served us well. And the only thing that's kind of shown me is that, we're all kind of built the same way. We're all cut from the same cloth in some manner of speaking, especially when it comes to business and positioning your brand and business for a customer. And that's really what we hang our hat on. And me particularly is kind of that emotional connection that a business or a brand has with its ultimate end user. And that's really what we focus on here.
I know there's a billion elements of branding, but let's kind of talk about some of the top level ones, because I feel like so many times people think their brand is the logo and the website and the colors and the fonts, and those are elements of it. But there's a few extra things that you've touched on and that I know that we need to go with, which is the message, the brand message to market, and what you do to solve the problem of your target audience. That ties into your branding, because maybe that goes into the elements of your graphics on your website or your colors? And then also, what about that, I guess the story is what we'll call it, because there's a message, which is the words, and then there's the story and the emotion behind that. So talk a little bit about how all of that comes together, and then maybe how you help guide the process with your clients.
I mean, wow, that was a lot in a very short question. But you're right. A lot of people think a logo is a brand or vice versa. And, we all kind of seen Mad Men and how that looks in the 60s golden age of advertising. But, if you can remember, they even referenced it in Mad Men. But, some people know David Ogilvy, kind of a famed ad man from that time period. And he said that a brand is an intangible sum of a product's attributes. And he went on to say that's name, that's price, it's packaging, it's history, it's reputation. We go on to say it's how you answer your phones, how you dress in your business, how you end your signature line, what your email looks like, things like that. So it's really all of those pieces that add up to what a brand is. It's kind of like, if I said, I think I know all about you, Mike, because your name is Mike or originally Michael, I'd be way off base, right? That doesn't tell me who you are. That just tells me what to call you. Yeah. That's what a name and a brand can be. But now, if you imbue that with meaning, you mentioned color there, among other things, if you start adding layers to this, we called it this because this name has a meaning that kind of goes back generations, either named after a founder or named after some kind of like evocative name we came up with, or it's an acronym of some things. And then we add some color to it. Colors we know have a psychological meaning behind them. Why do we choose certain ones? It could be what's going on in the marketplace. You add all of these things together, including, very importantly, things like voice and tone, which is how you speak and who you're talking to in layman's terms. Then that's what starts building the brand. And if you really think of what Ogilvy said, that it's the intangible sum of the attributes, we often say here in the business that it's an emotional connection with the brand. So let me put it this way. If I told you and your listeners that Nike just announced that they're going to start a new airline, and it's going to be called Nike Air. Now, that's actually a good name, isn't it? I just thought of that.
Kind of flows well.
But, right, exactly. But if you said that, and I said, close your eyes and describe the color of the plane, what it looks like, tell me what the airline attendants will be wearing, the food they're serving, the comfortability of the seats, and so forth, we'd all probably come around the same conclusion. There's probably going to be orange in there somewhere. There's probably going to be a swoosh on the tail fin or on the side of the plane. It's probably going to be healthy food. They're probably going to be wearing, their athletic trainers on their feet when they're walking up and down the aisle, probably some kind of Lycra, quick-wicking, comfortable, movable product. We kind of have an understanding of what that's like. Just like when we think of Apple and the Apple Store and the geniuses there and the products, it's all white, streamlined, clean, classy. There's all those things that come together is what make up a brand. So it's really interesting when people say, oh, no, I have a logo, I don't need a brand, or I have a brand, I have a logo. They're both equally wrong, because it's really what your customer tells you about your business is what your brand actually is. So the only way you can change that perception is through positioning, through a conversation with them, through understanding who you are yourself, so you can better educate the marketplace about your product, your service, and so forth. So there's a lot more than even that just goes into it.
Yep.
And so the misconception quite often that people understand what a brand is. And it's really, that's just where it begins. The work to create a brand, to sustain that brand credibility and the voice in the marketplace, and especially with your consumer, it takes a lot of work over many, many years.
Well, you said something interesting that I want to go a little bit deeper on, which is the aspect, it ties to positioning. And in marketing academics, I teach marketing for a few universities, and one of the 4 Ps of marketing is positioning. And really the crux of that is in the mind of the consumer. So it doesn't matter about you and your firm and what we want and the colors we want and the message and the branding we want. It's all about what's going to resonate with the customer. And there is, I'm sure, an elaborate process to reach out to a brand's customers and do some mystery shopping or surveys or interactions, focus groups, and go, what does this brand mean to you? What did you think before you interacted with them? What did you think after you bought their product or service? And really crafting that message to amplify it in a story. Is that a good assessment that way?
I mean, yeah. I mean, when can you start? Because I think having more people like you on our staff would take us far. No, you're absolutely right. And it's, equally as concerning sometimes to us as branders when we hear this from clients or future clients or prospective clients, when they say, here's what we're about. That's usually a red flag for us, because the folks who come to us and ask us, who they are the ones who get it. And by that I mean this, and you kind of hit it on the head. If you go to your customers and ask about how you're positioned or who you are or how you might be perceived in the marketplace, you're going to get a little bit more of a more articulated, honest feedback that you might not necessarily see. And we often liken brands to people, right? So, I would like to think I'm X, Y, and Z as a person, personality, what I believe or whatever. But if I ask my colleagues or my family or my children or my parents about me, they might give me something different. Some of that might be hard to hear, and some of that might be a little bit more from their experience, and it might not always be bad, but it might be something I haven't thought of. Because we like to think of ourselves in a different light, always probably in better light than it might be. And so brands who come to us and want to understand more about who they are really are the ones who go, can you survey our customers, blind study, or here's a list of 100 folks. Yeah. You pick the ones you want to speak to. They're the ones who get it, because if you think about positioning, really just being the process of differentiating your product or your company or service or whatever, it's all in the mind of the customer. And so it's usually relative to your own competitors. So there's a reason why somebody might go to Target over Walmart, or somebody might buy a PC over a Mac, or drink Pepsi over Coke. What is that? What's that connection they're making? And why is it important to them? It's not what's important to you, because once a brand gets out there into the ether, you really don't own it anymore. A lot of musicians will say that, they don't own their song once it becomes popular. Everybody owns it. They just sing it. And it's very much like that with a business or a brand. Once it takes meaning and takes hold, gosh, you got to screw that thing up or make it drastically better to change the mindset of the people who you're interacting with.
Yeah, that's really huge, and I'll even take it a step further with talking about surveying your audience, and that's a wonderful step. But you better use some of the messaging and the phraseology you learn from the audience. Like like for instance, you've heard the old example, well, what keeps you up at night? Well, if you don't really resonate with keep being awake at night worrying about something, then that's not going to be a phrase that you like. But what's on the back of your mind and worrying you? Oh, well, that let me just tell you. So when you do interact with clients or survey the audience, listen to those phrases that come up, and create a word cloud if you need to, right? And come up with, this phrase comes up a lot. I'm going to use that in our marketing. And then you start having them resonate with that messaging, because it's like, you're speaking to me.
Right. You're absolutely right. And that's, it's again, how people view you, how they actually kind of compartmentalize you or put you someplace. And this comes in a lot with, we're talking kind of on the back of positioning, but this talks a lot about, where you are in the marketplace. So are you perceived as a lower end brand or a higher end brand from a price point standpoint? And, most brands want to position their price higher, but it's not just about the quality or the manufacturing process or, the supply chain or whether it's made in the U.S. or not. A lot of it is the perception of the consumer. If they don't think that you're worth what you say, or you've been discounting for a while just to clear out of inventory during Christmas or whatever it might be, then that becomes your price point. That becomes your value positioning, if you will, on what you kind of let them dictate who you are. And this happens a lot lately in retail when you look at brands that are hurting a little bit in mall anchor stores. The old mall model of having your inventory in the store, and you typically sell through it. But as mall traffic has declined the last 20 years and brands can't send their product back to their distribution center, they start discounting further and further and further to clear out of their inventory to take the next season. And then all that does is create this vicious cycle of you're starting to tell them that, we know kind of the brands we're talking about, I'm not going to go there. They're usually 50% off, or I'm just going to wait until they have their next friends and family sale or whatever. Yes. And so for them to make the same amount of margin as they made previously, they need to reduce the quality of their product. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg kind of scenario, because who is dictating the price? Well, in this case, kind of elevate yourself above that conversation and look at what the brand now means. The brand might not mean high quality anymore. The brand might mean discount. The brand might mean, if you need a pair of cargo shorts for the weekend, go to this store in the mall. It's that kind of thing. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's a very complex conversation between the business and the consumer. But that's why brands constantly need to reevaluate who they are, how they're speaking, how they're being perceived, and the brands that can afford it do a lot of blind studies and so forth, just to kind of really understand where they sit in the mindset of the consumer. It's quite fascinating, and clearly I can talk about this thing for hours.
Yep, exactly. Me too. And it reminds me of an example when you were bringing that, or when you were mentioning that. Let's say hypothetically, BMW introduced today in this worldwide announcement our entry-level model for $5,500.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what would people would start scratching their head going, wait a minute, there's no way. And it would lessen your brand perception of BMW or Lamborghini or whoever. It doesn't really matter. But when you have these low entry points, it does make you think, well, wow, why do I need the high end, 700 series then, if that's the case? And then let's think about this. If we do want to have that top shelf perception in the mind of our consumer, then we now start going, okay, then we need to speak like this in our marketing messaging. Then we need our website and our social media presence to look like this, because they all have to be congruent. And in marketing academia, it's called IMC, Integrated Marketing Communications. And that's a big piece, right? And I'm certain you work with your clients on that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it is all, we just kind of call it all the touch points, right? So it could be social media, your email, your website, your product itself, any kind of piece of your business or product that has the ability to speak into the customer. So that could be visually seeing it, touching if it's product, hearing about you, reading reviews. All of those kind of intangibles, going back to that quote, is really what makes up the brand. So using the BMW example, that's exactly right. And that's exactly why Toyota, when they brought in Lexus, started a new brand. They didn't say this is the high-end Toyota. This is, hey, this is our new brand called Lexus. It wasn't for years until people put it together. And I worked for a company called Now, N-A-W. Fantastic company, light years ahead of its time when they started. Started with a group of folks from both, a bunch of VPs from both Nike and Patagonia. And I worked there for a while during their turnaround, during their third ownership, and that's all just kind of backstory. The idea is this highly sustainable product for the environment and how they make their stuff using sustainable materials like, corn husk jackets and recycled polyester that actually helped invent or help bring to market, rather, recycled down. So goose down that was recycled from old blankets or jackets, brought back to life in this French facility and then repackaged. It was beautiful. Patagonia now kind of owns the market in there, but we started there when I was at the brand. Okay, all that to say this. $600 jackets are one thing. If you can't sell through that inventory and you start selling it at $300 and then you still have too much left and you still want to bring in your next season, and you can't afford the next season until you get through your old, aging, dying inventory, you reduce it to $250, you reduce it to $200. After a while, you're saying it's kind of like that $5,500 BMW small car example. You're telling people that $600 jacket, it's really worth $200. And that is so detrimental to a brand. So it goes both ways, right? It's kind of starting a brand and understanding where you want to be positioned, or by virtue of what you've done through the process of doing business, how you can erode your brand credibility. And so it's not just coming out with a new product at a different price point. It could be you've done it to yourself. And that was a very difficult thing to overcome. They've since done it, and they're doing quite well. But that's a very slippery slope. And so you're right. So what does it look like? And that's why focus groups do a lot of help to brands. Again, brands that can afford it, because it is costly and you have to get a really wide sample set. But having that, and you can have a few people say, I don't know. I mean, my dad drove a Beamer, and it was pretty expensive, and he was a doctor, and I don't think driving a $5,500 Beamer gives value to that thing, and that's how you're known. So there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm trying to purposely not use marketing terminology, but you're absolutely right. It can go both ways. Excellent.
Well, listen, I think you've said it, and I agreed with it, that we could keep going on and on forever and ever, because it's such a fun, exciting topic. But if anyone is listening and would be interested in maybe having a consultation with you over the phone and seeing what you could do for their brand, what's the best way that someone could reach out and connect with you guys?
Well, there's a bunch of ways. Probably the easiest thing to do is just to reach out to us at either hello@ thebrandleader.com, or just go to our website, thebrandleader.com, and just fill out our contact form. There's also a great resource on the site. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Rebranding. And don't let that fool you. It's not really just about rebranding, but a lot of business viewers are trying to understand what their brand means and how they can position themselves, what goes into a brand and or a rebrand. It's a great resourceful tool. It's free to download. You can find it on the website. It's in the footer of every page, or it's through the navigation. And that's another great way people can get their questions answered without having to talk to us first. But we're always here, whether it's myself, Jeff, or any one of the account team, who'd be more than willing to have a conversation like this.
Excellent. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for coming on. It was really fun talking with you.
Yeah, likewise. It was really fun. And if you want to just call me personally sometime, I'd love to riff off some branding stuff. Sounds like you have a lot of stuff to offer.
Sounds good. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.